Hi, I'm Jim Anderton, technical editor of SSGM Magazine, and we're here at AAPEX SEMA 2013 in Las Vegas. This is the big show. It's the show everyone needs to be at. This is the show where new innovations are introduced to the industry. I'm with Malcolm Sissmore. He's Delphi's country director for Canada and the North American sales director for telematics, training, and tools. And Malcolm, I understand that you have a service solution here that would drive business to independent repair shops across Canada. Tell me about it.
Absolutely. It's telematics. Everybody's been talking about telematics, and we have a telematics solution as an OE company. We've been in the telematics business for over 16 years on OE platforms, and we take that technology now, we're bringing it to the aftermarket, because we are a parts manufacturer for the aftermarket of things like fuel systems and coils and mass airflow sensors and O2 sensors. So what we've done is we've taken that technology in a little device like this, where we put in here a scan tool, and it's a cell phone, and it's a computer, and it's a GPS. Plugs into any OBD2 port, 1996 or newer, and then it starts reading data off the bus. Starts pulling things like diagnostic trouble codes, and we take those codes and then we interpret the code. But what we're doing kind of here is that we're working with the connection between the shop owner and the service advisor and their customer. We want to make sure that there's a connection there. So when we have an alert that comes up and there's a diagnostic trouble code for like a mass airflow sensor, both the consumer will see why their check engine light came on, and we've written a description that says what it is and if it's safe to keep driving or not. At the same time, their preferred shop is also getting that same notice. So they're able to see what that problem might be and then start coordinating with the vehicle owner on getting the vehicle in to get it checked. And that's really just for like a diagnostic trouble code. We have over 3,000 codes that we're interpreting and writing descriptions for them. And that's one part of it. The other thing is that we can monitor things like battery life and battery health. Every time you turn an ignition on the car, we're measuring that voltage 830 times per second, like a scan tool would do it. And we record that voltage, and if that voltage, if you drop down below a certain amount, it'll trigger a weak battery. And then the shop owner would see the weak battery of their customer, and the customer would see that weak battery. And the idea is then get the vehicle into the shop, do a real battery test. Do you have a weak battery? That way the shop owner is able to give a reassurance and trust to the customer, the consumer, that we're going to make sure you're never left stranded. We're going to make sure you don't have any downtime if you're a fleet. There's also other things that, as Delphi is in this business, we also are in the insurance telematics business, where insurance companies are putting devices on vehicles and they're measuring how people drive, where they drive, and when they drive, and how much they drive. From an aftermarket side, we really want to know how much they drive. We really don't care how they drive. But what we do here is we take that same data, all that insurance data, and say, let's make it available to the consumer. So a consumer can put up geofences around, let's say if it's a small fleet, like a jobber store, and they put a geofence around the store, and then their trucks go out to make deliveries, and all the shops, their preferred shops, you put a geofence around that, and people can be notified when the parts are on their way to the shop or back, that kind of stuff. Or if you're a consumer and you want to monitor your teen or your parents, and you want to make sure they don't go out a certain boundary. So those are all available. But what's kind of interesting how this is morphing into more things is insurance companies are very interested in aggressive braking, because the more aggressive braking you have, kind of the worse driver you are. When we look at that, we say, okay, fine, we're collecting that data. How can we use that data in the aftermarket? And one of the things that are coming out is, like, if you do a brake job on a vehicle or do a brake inspection, how do you know when that vehicle needs to come back in to get the brake pads replaced or checked? You don't really know until the consumer says, hey, I got a pulsation, I got a problem, and ideally they come back to your shop, but they may be out of town or they see someone else with a 1999 brake special up there. So how can you look at getting that vehicle back? So what we've done is you accumulate those hard brakes, and you set a code and say, I know that person's vehicle, I know that it's a plumbing company, it's always loaded with heavy weight. At 400 hard brakes, which is a reduction of 30 miles an hour over an 8-foot section, I want to trigger a brake inspection. I want to get the vehicle back in and do a brake inspection. So the customer, they say, look, if you come in for these inspections, maybe you can get away with just putting a new set of pads on, not having to put rotors and calipers or whatever might be there.
It saves money.
It saves money, and it gives the satisfaction to the consumer. The consumer also feels, hey, my shop they're as good as the dealer or better. You know, the dealerships have embedded telematics and they're focusing on that brand. This is an all makes, all models, 1996 or newer, up to Class 3 truck.
And Malcolm, an immediate thought occurs to me with a unit like this is that a common dilemma, a common problem in the repair aftermarket is vehicle sets a code, often drivability code, sometimes an evap code. The owner or the driver cannot clearly describe or define what the driving conditions were when the code was set. a major problem sometimes in diagnosing this issue. Was it wide open throttle? Was it pulling a heavy load? Was it stop and go traffic? Things which could really help the diagnosis process. This sounds like something which would be ideal for actually defining what the driving cycle was at the time the code was set.
Absolutely. In fact, the technician's able to see pending codes. So they're able to look into the system, and we're storing all these codes offline in a cloud, so the technician can just run a DTC history, and they can see all the pending codes and then the stored code that the customer's called and said this is the light on that. For sure you can see the driving habits of the conditions of it, especially if the consumer allows you to look at that. So that's definitely there. It's a way, you think as well, this technician now is doing all this kind of diagnosis remotely. The vehicle could be 100 miles away. They could have a customer in Florida, and they're helping them out because the lights come on and they're worried about what I have to do. So they're able to do all this remotely and then plan the repair. We all know that in technicians in a shop, you have your drivability tech and you have your other techs that are doing other jobs, and sometimes you can't have two drivability issues coming in at the same time. Someone has to wait. This way you can schedule it in, you can schedule the right tech for the right job at the right time.
That sounds ideal. So presumably, to a customer relationship management perspective, your customer's on vacation, they're in Florida, they've set a classic evap code. You could presumably tell at that point, it says this is not a serious drivability issue, not going to harm the engine, it's okay to drive for another week, bring it back to me, and then we'll address it then. So instead of the classic, my gas cap is bad, but I've got to check engine light, what do I do? You could almost then, by cell phone or by remotely, just reassure that the customer that they're going to be good to go.
And then some. We can reassure the customer on the code, whether it's you're okay to drive, your fuel economy may not be that good, and when you make an appointment, come back, you're okay. Or you just need to get repaired right away. Same time, you think about just an evap from leaving your gas cap off. And so someone says, did you just get gas, Mrs. Smith? Oh yeah, I did. Oh, I left it off. Well, that's what it is. Now, Mrs. Smith would have to go through whatever drive cycle of that vehicle to clear the code. Yes. Ignition on and off, or up 50 miles an hour, whatever the case may be. Well, we have the ability through this technology to clear that code remotely. So the technician at the shop could say, Mrs. Smith, I'm going to clear that code for you. Now, we're leaving that completely up to the shop when they want to clear the code. Sometimes they may want to clear the code just to see if it happens quickly again, or they don't want to clear the code because they want to get the vehicle back into the shop. Keep in mind, our business is all about doing repairs and maintenance. We don't suddenly want to give away diagnostic out there. Yes. So we're not saying this is a complete diagnostics out there. We're able to be a convenience to Mrs. Smith. I mean, if it's a gas cap, isn't it wonderful? You can say, I've cleared it for you, Mrs. Smith, which is like the dealership can do.
Remarkable. And this is available right now?
It's available through auto parts distributors that are our customers. Delphi is a parts manufacturing company, and especially when it comes to things like engine management, O2 sensors and mass airflow sensors, O2 sensors, coils, there's usually a DTC code attached to that. So what we're doing here is not only making sure that technicians aren't able to compete with the OE side of it, it's also to help our distributors sell our parts. So the way we're going to market with this is through our parts distributors, who are our channel partners, who frankly, that's who's supplying the parts to the shops, who are supplying to the consumers.
Remarkable. 21st century diagnostics through the cloud. Malcolm, thanks for telling me about it.
All right, you got it.